Well, hi there, food friends. It's Kevin, and welcome to Cavalcade of Food. In today's episode, it's vintage appliances, and we are going to look at some coffee pots, but not just any coffee pots. So I've had a number of requests from people to take a look at my coffee pot collection, which is fairly substantial because coffee pots were the very first appliance that I began to collect. And I was a teenager at the time. So I've been collecting coffee pots for over 40, almost 45 years. And I have hundreds and hundreds of coffee pots. So many that I actually can't display them all, but I do have quite a bit here at the Cavalcade on display, and I thought, well, how am I going to show all these coffee pots? It's almost too much just to say here they all are. So I'm going to try to break them down by types of coffee pot: percolators, coffee urns, which I think I've done a video on, drip coffee pots, and vacuum, or as they often call it now, siphon coffee pots. Funny how words change. So we used to say drip and now it's pour over, and we used to say vacuum and now it's siphon. But folks, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same. And so I wanted to share the vacuum pots, or at least some of them, a representative sample. Let's say it like that, because one of my food friends who lives fairly close in the thumb here to the Cavalcade studio, Pauline, she sent me an email and said, hey, I've got a couple old coffee pots, nobody wants them, and boy, I'd hate to throw them away. Would you be interested? So I said, well, send me a photo and let me see. Well, turns out they were vacuum coffee pots. So now they are part of the Cavalcade collection. So thank you so much, Pauline, for allowing me to give these wonderful old vacuum pots a good home here at the Cavalcade. And I thought, well, this is an opportunity to share them all with you. So watching on YouTube. So first thing I'm going to do is let's just talk about the vacuum pot. Sometimes people call these a double bubble, but all vacuum pots work with the same scientific principle. There's a bottom chamber, there's a top chamber, okay? And there's a pretty tight seal between these two chambers. The water goes in the bottom chamber. The coffee grounds go in the top chamber. And there's generally a filter in between these two things that allows the water to go up and the brewed coffee to come back down, leaving the grounds in the top chamber. And so when you have this sort of these two vessels connected, and the bottom vessel heats up, and that water starts turning to steam and starts to boil, it gets siphoned or vacuumed into the top chamber, where it then mixes with the grounds. And that goes on for a certain amount of time, and then the heat shuts off. And then what happens is the bottom chamber cools down, and then you have the reverse vacuum happen, where what is now coffee in the top chamber gets pulled down into the bottom vessel and then it's ready to serve. So to illustrate that, I'm going to use this. This is a vacuum pot that was manufactured by Black Decker Appliances. This was made about 20 plus years ago. I bought it when it came out. It's called an Infuze is the model. And basically it is a vacuum pot, and here's the bottom chamber where I have put water. Here is the top part where I have put the coffee grounds. There's a filter. that hold a very fine mesh filter that holds the coffee grounds in place. I'm going to put this on. You gotta put it in so that it seals. Then there's a lid that goes on the top, and I'm gonna put that on there. And kind of keep an eye on this, because I'm gonna turn this on and let it brew as we're talking. And well, you wouldn't be able to see what's going on in these chrome metal pots. And I have some glass ones, which I'll talk about in a minute, that would go on top of the stove. But you kind of got to watch these once they come up to a boil. And I don't want to have to worry about fussing with that while I'm trying to talk to you. So this should do it automatically. I have not used this one in like 15 years. So fingers crossed that it works the way it's supposed to. Okay, let's get to some vacuum coffee pots of the automatic electric nature, of which probably the most popular and the most common were made by Sunbeam. And here it is. And you know what? When you look at this, it is really beautiful. This is the, I want to make sure I get the model number right, C30. C30A actually is the model number. And it is beautiful. Again, top, bottom, here's the lid. If you can see inside, there is a filter there. We'll get a closer look. I'll take the other one apart. And this has sort of this wonderful etching on it of a sphere and obelisk, which is modeled after the 1939 New York World's Fair. And Sunbeam had this on their appliances. Ooh, I'm hearing something. I don't know if you can pick it up, but I'm hearing something going on here. So here's a C30C. And I'm gonna hopefully take these apart. There we go. Okay. So we have our bottom vessel, and we have our top vessel. So some information here. If you want an old vacuum coffee pot, chances are you're going to find a Sunbeam. But here's what you want to really watch for, especially on these C30s. This rubber gasket here. Here's what happens over time. It's rubber. It gets hard, it gets brittle, it cracks, it gets stiff. And you know what? Then you don't get a good seal in between the top and the bottom. And if you don't have a good seal, you can't get that vacuum. You probably can't tell yet, but it's coming up to a boil here on our Black & Decker. And pretty soon you're going to see the water is creeping. It has already begun to come up into the upper chamber. Anyways, back to the Sunbeam. It has a filter system, which, ooh, you hear it? There it goes. See, that water is now up here with the coffee grounds. Again, all the heat's coming from the bottom here, and it's coming up. Push the water into the top chamber, and it's mixing and mingling with those coffee grounds. And now this is an automatic unit, so I'm not quite sure. I'm trying to remember. It does this for a couple of minutes, and then it will cut the heat at some point to the bottom vessel, and it will create the reverse vacuum. And all of a sudden you'll see the water will leave the top chamber and go into the bottom chamber. Now, it seems like a lot of fuss. The reason why a lot of people always preferred this method is that they claim it makes a very smooth cup of coffee. And I would say that I think that's true. It does make a very smooth cup of coffee. There is something that happens in this process that sort of neutralizes, something's going to happen here because it's getting quiet. Anyways, neutralizes a lot of the acidity in the coffee. Okay, I think it just, the heat just shut off. Well, we're just going to wait for it. It's like a little show here, isn't it? And come on. All right. We're going to go back to our Sunbeam here. I wanted to show you the filter on this Sunbeam. So this one has a cloth filter, actually. An actual piece of fabric that is on a spring-loaded mechanism that holds it down in place. And what you would do is every time you made a cup of coffee after you, there it goes. Check that out. Okay? Okay. The water has, the coffee has gone back down from the top chamber to the bottom chamber, and now we got coffee. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm gonna need a cup of coffee here in a second. Anyways, here's the filter, a piece of cloth, and actually this is a couple layers thick sewn together around the edge. And then what you did is you wash this out. When you're washing your coffee pot, you'd wash this out, you'd let it dry, and you'd use it again and again and again. It didn't last forever. Periodically you'd have to change them out. So that's how it worked. And I'm going to come back to this because what I want to do is take this top part off. Now, the thing about these vacuum pots is you've got the top part now. What do you do with it? You can't stand it up on anything. You can't lay it on its side. You don't want the grounds to fall out. This coffee pot actually has a little holder that you can put it in like that. And then I'm gonna, this is the lid for the bottom chamber. And there, my friends, is the coffee. And cheers. It is smooth, I will say. So anyways, back to the Sunbeam. You put your filter in, it hooks on, has a little hook, hooks to the bottom of the spout. Coffee grounds go in, water goes in, you put it on. This is a few extra steps, and it's a few extra steps to clean and wash. This is primarily the reason I believe why the vacuum method never really got super popular, because it is a little more complicated. There are more parts to wash and more cleaning to do. But that's the Sunbeam. And then we put this back on like so. It hasn't. Now, you could buy a thing like this. This is exactly what it looks like. This is a stand for the top vessel to go into. And I'll demonstrate it here with the later model Sunbeam. This is a C50. So this is an updated version, C30, C50. You can see it's a different shape somewhat. It has a different control on it on the front, But most importantly is this. You'll see it has these two little levers here, which are actually clamps, and make it very, you see how I struggled to get that thing on and off? Not this. This comes off easily. This is really an evolved design from the first one, if you ask me. Anyways, easy to get on and off. It just clamps down. And then what they did with the C50 is the same basic filter, except they updated it and they made it a metal mesh here rather than that piece of fabric. Okay, so you didn't have to fuss with that all the time. So you've got a couple of metal screens that actually hold the coffee grounds in place. And of course, a metal screen will last a long time and you could use it, you know, many, 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 many times. But that little gizmo is this. Gives you a place. This thing is hot when the thing's done brewing, all that boiling water churning around in this metal container. And you got to take it off and you got to put it somewhere in the sink or what? Well, you could get a little stand and just put it like this. Cory made this particular stand. And then you would take the lid from this, you'd put that on and pour your coffee and you're good to go. So those are the Sunbeams. I will also say that among the little treasures that Pauline had for me was a pack of disposable single-service coffee filters for the Sunbeam CoffeeMaster. These are again C30, C50, but they are a CoffeeMaster is the model name. And these are actually a paper filter that they sold. 29 cents got you 50 of these, and you could use a fresh one every time you made a pot of coffee. So, anyways, here's our Sunbeams. I mentioned Cory. Sunbeam was in Chicago, Illinois. So was Cory. You might say Chicago was almost a epicenter of vacuum coffee pot making and coffee pot making generally, because Cory was a pretty big player, as was Sunbeam. So here are two Cory vacuum pots. This one is an EUC model, and this one is a EAC model, or yes. So EAC, EUC. Okay. The difference is this one has an aluminum body. This one has a chrome plated body. Different metal. Other than that, they're the same unit. And Cory, however, unlike Sunbeam with their mesh or their fabric filter, Cory devised a glass filter rod, they called it. And it's simply a glass rod that dropped down into the tube here, and it will keep the coffee grounds up, but it's light enough so that when the water comes up to the second story, as it were, it's able to be pushed up, allowing the water to get with the coffee, drops back down, and when the reverse siphon hits, there's enough room around this glass bulb for the liquid to go through, but the grounds to stay in the upper chamber. A real ingenious design that Cory had, and certainly much simpler to deal with than all the filters and the springs and everything else. This just dropped in. They were glass though, and they did break, but you could buy them at any hardware store. They were fairly inexpensive. So these are electric, they're automatic, and they're a nice design. And then they had a lid that just flipped all the way open like this, put your top on, and when it was done, and it had a locking top for the vacuum, for the top chamber, because when that water comes up here and starts mingling and gurgling, it can splash everywhere. You really do need a good top to it, which is part of the issue with some of these that have sort of open tops. You got to really watch what's going on, or you're going to have a mess on the top of your stove. So this was Cory's contribution to vacuum pots. Then we have a couple here. Now, this one is a Cory all glass unit. This one is a Silex all glass unit. Two popular brands. And I think really beautiful, really nice looking. They both, the Cory, not surprisingly, uses a Cory filter rod, just like the electric pots. The Silex uses a filter rod too. It's slightly different than the Cory rod. This one is a Corning rod. It's made by Corning because the glass here is also made by Corning. It's Pyrex, so it's, you know, kind of a heat-proof glass. And the word Silex and sort of this mechanism, this design, was actually patented back in 1910 by two sisters. I think they were from Salem, Massachusetts. They came up with the name Silex to refer to this vacuum coffee making process and vessel. But vacuum coffee, the process itself, was not new. They just kind of came up with this design. It dates back to the 1830s and 40s in Europe, I think Germany. So the process has been around for a while. And I think probably more popular in Europe than it ever was in the United States. The problem with these glass ones, as you can imagine, because they are glass, both of these things had to be washed, and you're in a sink full of soapy suds, and everything's slippery, your hands are slippery, and down goes the bottom or the top, and it breaks. I have found a lot of orphan tops, a lot of orphan bottom vessels around in my travels over the years because something happened and the other half broke, and whoever wasn't able to get a replacement. So you really have to be careful with these because they're not indestructible. However, there are some that are, and I'm lucky to have them because these are the ones that I use. So these are Nicro, which, by the way, was also in Chicago, Illinois. So Nicro made these, and I have a few different sizes. And these are all metal. They are stainless steel. And again, here's your bottom vessel. Here's your top vessel. Works all the same. This goes on the stove. So it's not automatic, so you have to watch it. And they had a filtering system which employed a spring. So here's your filter, basically right here. You put it in. This hooks on to the bottom of the siphon tube. Pull it out there like so. That's just how it works. And there you go. You could buy other filter gizmos. This one is made by Silex. It is a ceramic. Works the same way. You would put it in your vessel like that and pull and hook like so. And it would hold the coffee grinds up here but allow the water to go in and out of the top vessel. So, but these things are sturdy. They're very heavy gauged stainless steel, and they do make a nice coffee, and I do use them. I try to give all my coffee makers a chance, but I do use these fairly often, and because I don't fear, there's so many parts that need washing. I fear I don't want to break something, so I use these, or I use one of the automatic wash coffee pots, like the Cory, or I really do love the C50 Sunbeam. It's great. So a little look here at the vacuum, or siphon if you want to call it that, coffee pot systems. Again, they all work primarily the same way. Part of the Vintage Appliance series here on Cavalcade of Food. If you're into vintage appliances and you'd like to see some of the other vintage appliance videos I've done, where I've showcased toasters and blenders and electric skillets and you name it, go to the website cavalcadeoffood.com and click on Vintage Appliances, and there'll be links there to all the vintage appliance videos that I've done over the years. I'll also ask you to please subscribe if you haven't already done so, because subscriptions help this channel a great deal, and we certainly do appreciate you subscribing. There's a little bell icon under the screen. That's for notifications. If you'd like to be notified every time a new Cavalcade video goes up, you can hit that bell and get your notifications. So, as always, I appreciate you watching. With just me today, me, a tripod, and a camera. So thank you for being patient as I didn't have my normal helpers available today, but I really wanted to get this video done. So hopefully it'll work out. I'm going to enjoy my coffee and wish all of you well. I hope your 2024 is off to a great start, and take care, and I will look forward to seeing you again real soon, right back here on Cavalcade of Food. Bye, everybody.